Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, November 28th, 2025 edition of Douglas Now Live. And I say good morning because on my clock, on my computer here, it says 11:59 a.m. So we made it here during the morning hours by 1 minute, less than 1 minute, actually. The day after Thanksgiving. Hope everyone had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And I know many people are still celebrating Thanksgiving. We are too at our house. We have a little bit to do this afternoon, but our second big Thanksgiving celebration of the weekend will be tomorrow. So it continues to go through the weekend. So I hope everyone will have, and is having a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Of course, now that that Thanksgiving has come and gone, it is officially Christmas season. And I listened to a little Christmas music this morning. The cold weather, of course, helps get in the Christmas spirit a little bit. It's a lot easier to get into Christmas when it's 35, 40, 45 degrees outside, little nip in the air, than it is when it's 75 and balmy. Years ago, when I used to travel to South Florida quite a bit, it was a rather surreal experience listening to Christmas music in Miami with palm trees and 85 degrees and people walking around in bathing suits and tank tops. It was interesting. You hear White Christmas on the radio and you're looking around and the only thing white down here is cocaine and maybe some beach sand, but certainly not snow in the traditional sense. But anyway, hope everyone's having a wonderful, wonderful holiday weekend. It's a great time of the year. I want to lead this morning with our top stories, as we do from time to time, with a sports story. And you can see on our picture here, we posted this a couple of days ago, but I think it's worth a little bit further discussion. Two former Trojans, one who is still a student at Coffee High School and one who is a student at Georgia Military College. So one's a senior and one's a freshman at their respective schools, have made their decisions regarding where they will play college football for the remainder of their careers. Coffee High senior KJ DeBruce has announced that he plans to attend Georgia State, while Georgia Military College freshman and former Trojan Tyrese Wiggett has committed to Georgia Southern University. Both are running backs. Both are really, really good players. And what's interesting is that the way things have happened since, and they're both Division I programs. And when I say Division I programs, I mean FBS programs, football bowl subdivision programs. Those are, of course, the upper level, the highest level of college athletics. And in terms of college football, they're the teams that play in the bowl games, all right, and are eligible for the college football playoff, the big college football playoff. The FCS, and there's Division I AA, I believe. They're still FCS, which have a playoff. All right. And we have several players right now playing at FCS schools. We only have one current player, playing at a FBS school, which is Maurice Turner, who is a running back at Tulane. The Tulane Green Wave, which have a really good chance of making the college football playoff. And that would be neat to have a former Trojan taking part in the playoff. I would not expect Tulane, and I'm not trying to wish any ill will on any of those of the schools outside of the Power Five. But I would not think that Tulane would make a big splash in the playoff. But it would be neat to have one of our own there. It might be worth, depending on which game it is, it might be worth trying to go to watch Maurice on the field. But I want to talk a little bit about the stats these guys had, because they both had really good years. All right. And we've covered both of these players at their respective schools. Tyrese Wiggett, we knew he was going to be a good one. But what he has done this year is absolutely phenomenal. He had, I don't know, I quit counting how many offers he had. He had some FCS offers, and he had multiple FBS offers. I was hoping he would choose Georgia Southern, and he did. I would love to see him play in Statesboro, be an opportunity to go watch him play next year. And he should come in and be ready to make an immediate impact. I mean, he is a generational talent, And we saw that last year at Coffee High, and then we've seen it this year at Georgia Military. Take a listen at his stats. They played 11 games. Their season's over with up there at Georgia Military. But he rushed for 1,079 yards on 117 carries. He averaged 98.1 yards per game. He scored 11 rushing touchdowns. He also caught 13 passes for 290 yards and 3 more touchdowns. He finished second in the nation in yards per rush, third in the nation in rushing touchdowns, fourth in the nation in rushing yards, and fifth in the in yards per game. Now that's in the NJCAA, National Junior College Athletic Association. Georgia Military is a 2-year school. So phenomenal year for Woodgett. And his average dropped a little bit toward the end of the season. He didn't get the yards that he had before. All right. But early in the season, he was in the top 3 in the nation in every major statistical category. And of course, still finishing in the top 5 in every major statistical category is pretty phenomenal. And back at Coffee High, KJ DeBruce finished his senior season with 859 yards on 159 carries. He averaged 5.4 yards per carry and also averaged over 107 yards per game and scored 11 touchdowns in 8 games. He was limited a little bit due to some injuries late in the season, but when he was healthy and he was on the field, he was an explosive player. He was a game-changing running back, and we knew that he would be. You had seen those flashes of greatness as he came up and everybody had their eyes on him. He's been a Division I prospect for quite some time. So congratulations to these 2 players. Looking forward to seeing them play next year. And the way college football works now, you have an opportunity to make an immediate impact when you get to that level, and particularly when you're coming out of a program like Georgia Military. They're a really good junior college program. Their players go to some really big schools, and when they leave Georgia Military, they are ready to get on the field and play at the Division I level. And we're going to see that next year with Woodgett. I believe he's going to have the opportunity to compete for a spot in the backfield at Georgia Southern. It's going to be a lot of fun. So again, congratulations to those 2 players. We are in the holiday travel period. And I think it's worth mentioning this because a lot of folks, don't like the increased presence on the roads. And that's what we have during any period of high volume traffic and high volume travel. And the Thanksgiving travel period, the Thanksgiving weekend, is the busiest travel weekend of the year. And I've been out a little bit. We traveled some yesterday. I've been on the road a little bit this morning, and the state troopers are out. The deputies are out. All right. There is an increased law enforcement presence on all of our roads in our area and statewide. All right. And there's a reason why. Listen to this, and I don't want to beleaguer this point, but I think it's worth mentioning. Last year, during the Thanksgiving travel period, and these are State Patrol numbers, the State Patrol reported 684 accidents, 349 injuries, 17 fatalities, 474 DUI arrests, 1,336 distracted driving stops, 9,479 speeding citations, 1,542 seatbelt violations, 17,356 citations overall, and 24,255 warnings. So for those who think that the State Patrol, all they do is write tickets and they have no mercy and they have no leniency, that's not true. They gave more warnings last year than they gave citations, but they did give a lot of tickets. The reason I mention this is driving is something that is near and dear to my heart. I love to drive. I love being out on the roads. I love having as much control over a vehicle as you can possibly have. I don't like the way cars are going, where there's a detachment now between the driver and the vehicle. The cars are so computerized, they do everything for themselves. And of course, we know that there are self-driving cars. If you would like to have one, you can get one of those. I am categorically 100% against that. To me, driving is fun. I still like manual transmissions. I like telling the car what to do and have it respond. I don't want to have to respond to what the car does. All right. But we're going in a very, very different direction. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There's for the average person. Okay, we're not talking about folks who have super dangerous jobs. We're not talking necessarily about first responders whose safety is on the line every single day. We're not talking about folks in the military or in upper levels of government service, those kinds of things, where you can really find yourself in a hazardous situation on a daily basis, right? For the average person, like me, like most of you who are watching this, who get up every morning, get our kids ready, get them off to school or wherever they need to go, and then go to work ourselves, the single most dangerous thing we will do is get in a car and drive. And it's the time that most people should be paying the greatest attention to what they're doing, and yet we find that in many cases, that's when people pay the least attention. All right? There's nothing more dangerous than that we're going to do on a daily basis than get behind the wheel of a car. When I used to travel around and do snake shows, on occasion, I would take, depending upon what the format was, what the location was, and my reptilian inventory I had at the time, I did do some presentations with venomous snakes. And if you pull out a rattlesnake or cottonmouth or something like that, people would freak out. And I would say, listen, I know y'all think this is the most dangerous thing you're going to see today, but it's not. It was far more dangerous for me to get in my car and drive to this show than it is for me to pull this rattlesnake out or cottonmouth or copperhead or whatever it was and show this to you. All right. And it's more dangerous for you to get in your car and leave this presentation than it is to have any type of interaction with this rattlesnake. So again, the reason I mentioned this, the holiday travel period is still going on. It's going to continue through the weekend. It'll slack off a little bit more and more. I think today is probably the busiest day of the weekend. But you think about that, 1,336 distracted driving traffic stops. They're way more than that than they caught. All right. I would shudder to think how many people are out here driving distracted. All right. If they caught 1,300, I don't know how many more there are. A bunch. But if you pay attention to the people you see on the road, you see that they are distracted. They are paying attention, more attention to their phones in many cases than there are to the roads. So why do I mention this? Everybody be careful. It's still going to be very dangerous over the next couple of days. So when you're on the road, be diligent, pay attention, and realize if you speed, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, if you're doing something like that, paying attention to your phone. There are more officers out on the road this weekend than there are probably any other time during the year, and there's a good chance that you could get caught. So everybody pay attention, be careful, and let's have a safe holiday weekend. One thing I want to mention here, and we're not going to beleaguer this point. I think we'll have some opportunities to discuss this more moving forward, but this is something that I would like to mention. We published a link to a story that came out on Wednesday that the Fulton County election interference case has been dismissed. There were 2 individuals from Coffee County who were indicted as a part of that. All right. And there were some people who wanted to see it go to trial, and there were a lot of other people who did not want to see it go to trial. Now, my opinion on that case the whole time has been that it was shaky at best, that it was going to be very difficult to prosecute, particularly after President Trump won his second term. All right. Probably not going to make a lot of progress on this thing while he is in office. So you're looking at several years down the road. By that time, how many elections have we had? We've already had a number of elections. And you got to keep in mind that what most of this dealt with, okay, I mean, you know, it was a pretty sprawling indictment. All right. So there were some things that took place on election night in the 2020 election and in the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of the 2020 election. Now, what happened in Coffee County happened a good while after the election and did not have anything to do with the election results. All right. And although there were concerns with what happened about, potential breaches of election security moving forward. But that was in 2021? We are now in 2025, fixing to be 2026. It's fixing to be 5 years removed since that happened. And what I keep coming back to is at no point in any county in Georgia have I heard any election results disputed or questioned because of what happened in Coffee County. And that's one of the things that people kept saying, is that because of the way the Georgia the Georgia election network, the computer systems works, the Dominion system, that if you gain access to one county's servers, you can access the other 158. All right. And theoretically, possibly, maybe, but we didn't see that. One of the big fears was because people had possibly gotten inside of our system that they could use that to change elections throughout the state. It hasn't happened. So we haven't had any type of election malfeasance after the breaches here in Coffee County tied to any other election. So I keep asking myself, what did it do? Was it really the security breach that people thought it was? And my opinion is no, it was not. All right. Because what you have to do, and this is what happens, not just in this case, but in a lot of cases, is you simply want to cast doubt on a process or an outcome. Just cast doubt on it. You don't have to show that something bad necessarily happened. You don't have to show that the results are tainted. Just cast a little doubt and make people question, well, possibly, could it be? Should we take a closer look? Should we do something different? And I felt like this was an opportunity for people who had a stake in the outcome of elections, all right, to cast doubt on the process, to get the process changed to something that would favor them even more. If you can control the elections, you can control a lot in a community, a state, even a nation. All right. So that was the cynic in me. The other question I asked is exactly what laws were broken. Because there was nothing specific to what happened in Coffee County in the indictment. And there were so many people who were brought in. Remember, this was a RICO case. All right. And I felt like one of the weaknesses of the case, what you have to show in a RICO case, you take a lot of people who are involved in a lot of shady things and you lump them into one case. And you have to show, first of all, that the group of people you are indicting is part of a criminal organization. That's why it's used with organized crime. And that's what RICO cases, or that's where RICO charges where they originated, were ways of taking all these different folks, these members of organized crime who you knew were doing something wrong, kind of related, maybe not always directly related, but they were all working together in some shape, form, or fashion, and you bring them under one legal umbrella and prosecute them. All right, that's easy to do, fairly easy to do in when you're dealing with organized crime, but you're dealing with a former president, his campaign, and people who support him. Now, we know how polarizing politics has become in our country. But because you disagree with someone politically, because you don't like someone's political views, doesn't mean that it's a criminal organization. So I always felt like it was going to be very difficult for the prosecution to prove that it was a criminal organization at work. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is when you take fractions and multiply them together, you do not get a larger number. And a lot of times prosecutors and law enforcement officers think the more people you bring into a case and the more you can tie, the more charges you can tie together, the stronger case you have. But many times it's actually a weaker case. You think about what happens when you multiply fractions. If you take half and multiply it times a half, you get a quarter. All right. So when you try to multiply things, you try to multiply fractions, now you multiply whole numbers, you get a larger whole number. But if you multiply fractions, you get a smaller number. And that's what happens a lot of times in cases like this, is you're taking bits and pieces of charges and criminal activities and trying to lump them together, multiply them with each other, and you don't always get a stronger case. Most of the time, in fact, you get a weaker case. Now, the motion to dismiss the case came from Peter Skandalakakis. Now, he appointed himself prosecutor on November 14th after he could not find another prosecutor. And November 14th was the deadline to assign a new prosecutor to the case. If 5 p.m. hit on November 14th and there was no new prosecutor, the case died on the vine. So he appointed himself. You might be asking, how can he do that? Well, he was the executive director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. And he could not find another prosecutor to take the case, or one that he felt like was qualified to take the case. So he assigned it to himself. Now, when he filed this motion to dismiss, he made the following statement: in my professional judgment, the citizens of Georgia are not served by pursuing this case in full for another 5 to 10 years. Now think about that. 5 to 10 years. You're looking at 2030 to 2035 from now. That will have put this case going on for about 15 years. How many presidents are you going to have in 15 years? How many more election officials are you going to have during that time? It was not a good use of taxpayers' dollars. It was not a good use of resources to continue this case. You weren't going to get anything out of it. Now, if you're wondering what the pardons have to do with this, because President Trump pardoned everybody involved in this case a few weeks ago, those pardons, it served two purposes. One, it was largely symbolic. It did not affect the case at all. Secondly, one thing a little more practically that it did was it prevented anyone at the federal level from picking up these charges and trying to prosecute, because these are state charges. The president cannot pardon himself, nor can the president pardon anyone else on state charges. They can only do that on federal charges. So it did not dismiss the charges. It did not dismiss the case when he when he issued those pardons. But it was sort of a preemptive pardon that would keep federal prosecutors from picking it up. It's the same thing President Biden did right before he left office. He pardoned his son and some other folks, and people were getting mad and upset, of course, and wondering what the deal was with that. They hadn't been indicted or charged federally, but what that pardon did was keep the Trump administration from coming in and filing charges, federal charges against them. So it didn't do anything with any current charges, but it prevented future charges. And that's what President Trump's pardon in this case did. It prevented future charges, but it left everything in place until Mr. Skandalakis filed the motion to dismiss on Wednesday. Now, not everybody was happy about it. Democratic Party of Georgia Chairman Charlie Bailey said the dismissal of this case is a travesty and a slap in the face to Georgia voters. Donald Trump and 18 others, including sitting state Senator Sean Steele, were indicted by a grand jury for attempting to illegally overturn our state's election. Multiple of their co-defendants pled guilty. The misguided decision denies the people of Georgia the accountability they deserve for Trump and his cronies' attempt to subvert their votes and silence their voices. Political grandstanding. The opposition, of course, will never miss an opportunity to try to let their opinion be heard and to say what to bring partisanship and their partisan opinion into it. But at the end of the day, this was going to be a very difficult case to prove. This was and some folks pled guilty. They did do that, and it remains to be seen what happens with those charges. All right, but The governor can't pardon those. All right. The president can't pardon those. Any pardon for those who pled guilty would have to come through the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. And there hasn't been any statement or any information released regarding that. So the folks who pled guilty, all of that is still in place. So again, we will see what happens with that. But this has been a hot button issue that's been going on for quite some time. As best as I can tell, and I've covered every election in Coffee County going back to at least 2000 and some even in the 90s, this has not affected any election. It's political grandstanding. It's political theater. The grand scheme of things, nothing was going to happen. Aside from those who pled guilty, no one was going to suffer any serious consequences other than having their name dragged through the mud and paying the attorney's fees that they had to pay to have these cases defended. So I'm going to have more on this because there's more to talk about. Because again, at the end of the day, it's just political theater. That's all it ever was. And now the curtain has closed on this particular act. We'll see what happens next. Let's take a look at our tower cam. A beautiful day in Douglas. A little chilly, going to warm up nicely. Going to be cold again in the morning, and then warm up again tomorrow afternoon. But another beautiful day here in Douglas and Coffee County. Everybody get outside, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy not hot, but warmer temperatures compared to what it was this morning. It was below freezing in some places in Coffee County. It makes those afternoons feel even warmer, but again, it's going to get cold tonight. So take the same precautions tonight that you did last night. Drip your faucets, bring your pets inside, stay warm, check on any elderly family members you might have to make sure that they are staying warm and staying safe. It still gets really cold inside your house if you don't run your heat. And some people are stubborn. They don't want to do that. So check on everybody and make sure that they are okay. Once again, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. A lot of people still celebrating Thanksgiving, and we will move on into the Christmas season from here. It's a great time of the year. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. You'll have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time.